Welcome back to the Sonda Society podcast. I'm your host, Dan Palmer, and today I am joined by special guest, Cassie Bratton. Cass, thanks so much for joining me.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Excited or nervous?
Very nervous.
I'd love people
both,
to
a
see
little
your...
bit of both.
There you go. So Cassie launched her own company, so CASSBRATT Art and CASSBRATT Social, which we'll go through and we'll get an exclusive insight into your personal life and journey, including talking about the businesses and the challenges that came alongside that. Let's start the journey, as we always do, from the beginning. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood.
Absolutely. Okay, so born and raised. I am a Calgary girl. I lived here till I was 18 years old, played competitive sports like my whole life. So that was kind of a big part of my childhood. Both my parents, they owned a business together, so that definitely weighed in on kind of how my future unfolded. But yeah, sports, school. When I was 18, that was when I moved away, lived in Kelowna for like 5 years, went to university there, played soccer at UBCO, and then did a bunch of traveling, and then landed back in Calgary, which I never really thought that like that path would work out the way that it did. When I left Calgary, I feel like I was kind of in a good riddance kind of vibe, but I love Calgary now. Very happy to be back home.
Cool, awesome. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. I guess take me back to your family. What's the dynamic there? Do you have brothers and sisters as well? What does the family look like?
Yeah, I have two sisters. I'm the middle child.
Okay.
So I'm like kind of the mediator of the family. That's the role that I've always played growing up, which I feel like helped me in business later on in life. But yeah, two sisters, and then my parents.
Awesome. And then you did mention growing up with your parents, you know, they had a business together. Talk to me a little bit about that business, and I guess what was it like growing up around that entrepreneurial kind of mindset there?
So my dad is an engineer. He ran like the back end of the shop. It was an oil and gas industry company. And then my mom had her business degree, so she ran like the front end of things. A lot of stress on a marriage there for sure. Didn't end great, but live and you learn. So I don't know. I feel like growing up around that, I leaned into that entrepreneurial mindset just because I was so interested in like the lifestyle that my parents created for themselves and the freedom that they had, like owning their own time and being able to like just be the master of their own schedule. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, did you see, like,
that.
were you seeing that firsthand, and that's kind of what intrigued you to I guess business?
Yeah, I feel like even growing up, like I never really had that idea like, oh, when I grow up, I'm gonna be the like owner of a company or I'm gonna start my own thing. It was just, it made sense to me. I think I just grew up not wanting to work for anyone else. Because I saw that in my parents. I saw like if my dad wanted to sleep in, he would sleep in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, kind of it went both ways.
So that was your motivator, just sleeping in, right?
Definitely. I'm a big sleeper. 8 to 10 hours a night, no less. But yeah, no, I think just growing up around that was had a big impact.
Cool. We'll obviously talk about business. I'm excited to unpack that as well. But talk to me. Obviously, you went through your childhood, and then you went to university, I believe. Talk to me about that story there.
Yeah. So growing up, I was a competitive skier, which we can talk a little bit about later. But once I quit skiing, I started playing soccer. I always played soccer as like a secondary sport, and then started taking it a little bit more seriously in grade 11. Made the soccer team at UBCO, so that's why I applied to UBCO. And then I took business there just because I didn't know what else to take. Then I landed in Kelowna, had a nice little scholarship there, and it was amazing experience. Like going to school, living in Kelowna is just something that everyone should experience. It was way too much fun.
What was fun? What can you share that was fun from your university experiences?
Well, UBCO was like the more fun version of UBC. It was like where all of the more fun kids went, I guess.
No offense to anyone that didn't go to.
Yeah, no offense. No, it was, and I think being a student athlete as well, like I just had such an amazing community. I met so many amazing people. The business program that I was in, I don't know how much it did for me academically, but it surrounded me with so many interesting people that I've been able to keep in my network and like watch later on. And now it seems like everyone has their own business. It was just such a cool network to be a part of and community to be a part of. Something that I'm just like really grateful for, would not change for the world.
Did you choose yourself to go into business, or did your parents push you towards that way? Again, you talked about living in a household where they ran their own businesses. Do you think there was an effect there of that's what you chose, or
Yeah, I didn't want to go to school. The only reason I was like committed was after I made the soccer team. So I always tell people like, oh, I went to UBCO, I played soccer. And they're like, oh yeah, but what do you take? Like, okay, business, I guess. But so that was always like a secondary, I don't know. I didn't want to go to university. I wanted to take a break. I literally didn't know what I wanted to do. But I knew at the time I didn't really like school that much. And I had no intentions of doing any sort of master's program. So that was something that my mom kind of pointed out to me, was like, okay, so if you just want to go in, get out, get an undergrad, it's either like business school, nursing school, engineering you could get away with. And that was pretty much it. So I was like, well, like business.
I think it's funny because everyone that starts a business, whether it's a side hustle, I feel like they all didn't want to do school. They never actually liked the academic side, and that's why they end up going off and doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you moved to Sydney, I believe.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, kind of the journey. I guess I want to understand, why did you choose to go to Sydney in Australia, and what that looked like there too?
So I moved to Australia. That was the last semester of my business degree. So when you go to school and play sports in Canada, they give you 5 years of eligibility. When I was in my first year, I decided I was like super committed to being a soccer player. And I was like, I'm going to play my whole 5 years. By my fourth year, I was like completely burnt out and decided absolutely not. I'm quitting soccer. I'm ready to do something else. So that was when that fifth year, I still had to come back and do school, but I had a lighter course load. I looked in, it was like a program through my school called, I don't know, Exchange Global, Go Global, I think. And I just got paired with a school in Sydney, Australia, which was amazing. I lived right on the beach. I dyed my hair blonde. I was going to be a surfer babe. So I just kind of changed my identity and moved across the world. But it was like such an amazing experience. So many cool people. And I just feel like traveling is something that everyone should do when they're young. It just gives you like such a good perspective on life.
Yeah, I think it also opens up so many possibilities, right?
Totally.
Some people end up staying away where they travel. Obviously, I'm in Canada now, not originally from here. So it's one of those things, you travel and you figure yourself out, you figure out who people are, you figure out what you want to do a little bit more. So I am pro travel and always want people to travel. You also, so you went to New Zealand after that, is that right?
Yeah, so I did like 6 months in Australia, and then I did about 3 months in Southeast Asia backpacking. And then I had a visa for New Zealand and was fully planning on living there for the next 2 years. So I moved to New Zealand, was there for like a few months, 3 or 4 months, and then COVID happened and I ended up moving home.
Right. So when you were traveling, including Sydney, did you go alone? Was this the whole plan to be alone? Were you with friends? How did you do your traveling experience?
Yeah. Sydney, I did alone, but it was I think I love traveling alone. Not really anymore. I feel like I'm more of a homebody now. But when I was younger, I was like such an extrovert and loved putting myself in uncomfortable positions. So yeah, I went fully alone. And I think because of that, like when you are traveling alone, you're forced to meet other people. Otherwise, you are literally just going to be spending it alone. It's going to be miserable. So yes, Australia I did alone. Southeast Asia I did with a friend, and we like met other people along the way. And then New Zealand I did with a boy, which we're not together.
We can leave that at that if you want.
Yeah,
I don't need to.
For sure. We definitely don't need to dig too far into the past there.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, those things happen, right?
Yeah. Sure.
But talk to me, I guess, about work. So you were working in New Zealand. I know you mentioned COVID had hit there. I know you did lose your jobs, but what were you doing for work when you were out traveling?
So when I landed in New Zealand, before when I was traveling, Australia and Southeast Asia, I wasn't working. when I was in New Zealand, that was when I finally finished my business degree. And I was like, I'm really trying to get a real job, like a big girl job. And I was trying so hard, like applying for everything and just could not get anything. So I was working a retail job and I was serving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which was just like,
Typical,
rent.
it's your traveling jobs, right? I think
Yeah.
everyone who's been traveling has probably been a server in their time,
Yes,
right? I think it's also a
absolutely.
good experience to meet people too. But again, COVID hit during this period. You came to a decision that you ultimately had to make, whether it was buy a plane ticket home or pay your rent. What I want to know and understand is, how did you determine the decision ultimately that you came up with?
Yeah, not to tap back into that relationship, but I do feel like that our time was kind of coming to an end. It was like things were very rocky, and then COVID happened, and my mom was calling me every single day telling me I need to get my ass home. And so it was kind of a combination of those two where I was like, this is maybe sort of an easy exit for me, just to I was like, the universe is telling me this is not where I need to be right now. So yeah, I came home, and honestly, that traveling was amazing, but coming home is, I think, the best decision I could have made for myself at that point in time.
So you felt good about the decision ultimately, even though you were in the moment of COVID, and I know it was a crazy time for everyone, even getting home and making those decisions.
Yeah, I think it kind of happened simultaneously with me really wanting to find what I said a big girl job was, and I could not find anything in New Zealand. So I felt good about coming home and kind of settling down and starting that next chapter of my life.
So I want to talk about sports. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, and you talked about, competitive skiing as well. So I want to break down all the sports you've done. I'm sure people online have seen all the different activities that you're into. But I know when you were younger, you were into competitive ski racing, super intense sport, as a lot of people would know. But tell me about the challenges of doing that type of sport and how you got into that.
Yeah. First of all, it's so funny for me to talk about competitive ski racing, because when I was younger, I felt like that was such a big, that was who I was. That was the only thing of who I was. And then as I grew up, even now looking back, that was literally over 10 years ago. And I'm like, am I still calling myself a ski racer? That's kind of embarrassing, but it is what it is. Amazing sport. So much fun. It was a grind, but it was also traveling the world with 15 of my closest best friends who I'm still best friends with. So I absolutely loved it. It was a great experience.
Yeah. No, I think when I look at sports like that, I'm always like, how the hell do people do that?
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned a bit of was it an identity crisis? Because I know you ultimately decided to quit skiing, right? And then did that make you feel like you'd lost your identity? If that was who you were for 10 years, how did you kind of overcome that?
Yeah, 100%. Ski racing was I think in my grade 10 year, I missed 4 to 5 months of school for ski racing. So just to paint that picture, every single weekend, every single week, we were on a plane going somewhere to train, to race, whatever. So it was such a big part of my life that when I ultimately decided to quit, and it's a weird sport, you peak at such a young age and you have to make that decision at such a young age. I was 15 years old. My coach came to me and he's like, do you want to do this for the next 10 years or do you want to quit? And I was like, I want to go to a high school party. So I went to a high school party, and I do think that transition was really, really hard for me. I remember kind of being depresso espresso sitting on my couch for a long little while there, and my mom kind of being like, all right, pick it up, sweetheart, go for a run, get something in here. And kind of a funny transition from there, I latched on to soccer. I kind of went from I am a ski racer to full identity crisis. Who am I? And then I started playing soccer, made the soccer team at UBCO, and I was like, I am a soccer player now. This is my new identity.
So did you feel like it sounds like to me, did you feel like you had to fill a gap because something was missing? And was that sport, and in general, you felt like it had to be a sport, or did it just have to be anything?
I think sports have been such a big part of my life and mental health as well. Like when I have a goal and I'm working on something and I'm working towards something, I feel healthy. And especially like obviously the endorphins that come with working out and actually physically being healthy, like it was just all thumbs up on that kind of side for me. So yeah, it was definitely filling a gap for sure. But kind of in a good way, kind of in a weird way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, well, you did it for years, right?
Yes.
And anyone would feel that way. I
Yeah.
was going to say it's like an alcoholic, and when they stop beer, they need to fill it
It's
with
an
something.
addiction. It kind of is. It
Yeah.
is like, it's like a weird addiction, for sure.
Yeah. And then circling again back to Australia, when you were there, I know you did surfing, and I believe a near-death experience occurred.
Yes.
I want to kind of unravel that a little bit for the listeners. Talk us through, I guess, what happened. Walk us through that day from start to finish, really.
Yeah. Well, I think I have had multiple identity crises. Like after ski racing, I had one, and then I was a soccer player for the next 4 years. Like I worked really, really hard. I never should have made that soccer team in the first place. But by the end, I was like 100% deserved to be there. And then I was so burnt out by all of the hard work that I put into it that I was like, screw this. I'm not a soccer player anymore. Quit soccer, and then made the decision to move to Australia, and then dyed my hair blonde and decided I was going to be a blonde surfer beach babe. And yeah, that was like I had that near-death experience that I had surfing was the first kind of like almost an ego check of like, you can't just be good at everything like as much as you want to. And like, maybe you have gotten away with that in other aspects of your life. Like, walking into anything with that kind of like confidence, that was an ego check for sure. But yeah, that was a scary one.
So
for sure.
talk to me about what actually happened.
Okay. So I was dating a guy who was like a rad surf dude. And I had like this giant 7-foot surfboard, looking like a nerd out there. And we pulled up and, you know, he's like, this surf is awesome. And I was like, totally rad, dude. And he just like runs out into the water, and it's like 8-foot waves. And I'm, you know, kind of moseying along right behind him. And he like jets out, no problem, gets out back behind the surf. And my big giant surfboard, like I couldn't duck dive anything. So I was just getting pummeled by these waves, like pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. And finally what happened, surfing in Australia was kind of funny. Like no one wants you out there. It's a very competitive sport on the water, especially like they're competing for the waves. If it's a good surf day, like you are not a local, you do not belong. You don't know what you're doing out there. Like get the hell out of here.
And Cassie being Cassie was like,
yeah,
the confidence, I got this. I'm joining the big
with
boys.
my stupid blonde hair. And I'm like, I'm coming. And yeah, horrible. So anyways, I'm getting like, I think the term is like wind or washing machined. Like, have you ever gotten stuck in the surf like that? Like massive
trapped,
waves.
basically.
Yeah, totally. It like pummels you down. You're stuck underwater. You come up for one breath of air and you get pushed back down, pushed back down. Finally, I like gather my shit. I come up and I look up and there's this big wave coming towards me, and this guy is absolutely shredding this wave. And I'm like, he's going to hit me. And that's the thing. When you're surfing, the surfer has the right of way. Everyone who's in the water needs to get out of the way. And, you know, like I said, the locals aren't always the nicest. So he's like, get the fuck out of the way, you know, like screaming at me with his cute little Aussie accent. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Ended up like taking him out. He was actually kind of nice when we came up out of the water, but he was like, you shouldn't be out here. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so I turned my board around to try and go back in, and I get like taken outside by the rip current. And that was like really where things started to get pretty scary. The beach that we were on was like, the side of the beach was all rocks. So it was like rocks on the side and then beach in the middle. And I got pushed outside, like to the left, by the rocks. And so like these massive waves, 8-foot waves, were like pushing me up against the rock, which was like, I don't know, there's like horror stories. Like you can get sucked under, whatever, you're going to drown. I went into like full blown, had a panic attack, had to kind of turn my fight or flight on. And I was like, if I keep freaking out, I am going to drown out here. And then, yeah, I knew that I had my survival instincts turned on because my nails are always long. Like I have long nails. and I hate seaweed, you know, the feeling of seaweed. Yeah. I hate having dirt under my fingernails. I know that's such a nerdy thing to say, but I like climbed out on the side of this rock, like this slimy ass rock. And I was like, tears running down my face. Like I don't know how to explain like how dramatic or like how terrifying it actually was. I think in Canada, we don't have a lot of experience in the water. And that was my first lesson of like how truly, truly terrifying the water can actually be, and how dangerous it can be. So yeah, anyways, that was my near death. I crawled out. I went and laid on the beach and just like cried for 45 minutes. And then the guy I was dating came out and was like, that was fucking sick. And I was like,
you were like, I need to be comforted right now.
I was like, I need a croissant and a hot bath. Like, I'm not okay.
Aussies are so chill. Like nothing affects them.
100%.
But when it came to, were you injured at all? Was it just purely obviously the fear of being dragged and controlled by water?
Yeah, I wish I got injured because I feel like that would validate my experience a little bit more. But no, I was just.
I'm like, where's the
fear.
blood? She was smacked the rocks. Body hit the side of the rocks. I'm like,
yeah, I was just crying. So.
Come on. You just missed the wave. Like, come on. But no. I get that. Obviously, water, when you're in it, especially when you're not competent in water, is a crazy, crazy place.
Totally.
It can take complete control of your body, and especially if you're in panic, you can't put your feet on the ground. There's nowhere to go, and you know, you do hear these stories of crazy things that happened. I'm gonna guess that's put you off surfing, or are you getting out on the waves soon?
Yeah, no. But it did kind of spark like the first time I had this realization. I remember I had a conversation with my mom and she was like, well, what the hell were you doing out in these 8-foot waves? Like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, you know, she's like, why don't you just get a longboard and play in the like fun little, you know, beachy waves? And I'm like, yeah, that's a kind of a good idea. Like, why is that like I just needed to be like putting myself in that ridiculous situation without any experience or expertise, you know?
Well, I think it goes back to the confidence thing.
Absolutely.
You think you can do everything,
it's a confidence problem.
Absolutely kill it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing
No.
yet. I haven't discovered. I'm sure at the end, all of the listeners will either determine whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But obviously, you don't do that sport anymore. I'm going to guess you went into a different one.
Yes. Then I went into mountain biking.
Okay.
Love mountain biking. I still do, but I did also really hurt myself. I was like trying to keep up with some pretty intense mountain bikers, and I'd only been biking for like 2 seasons. I think this was my 2nd season that I had a really, really big crash. I wouldn't say like a near-death experience, but that was probably like, if you want blood, for sure, I'll show you the pics later.
I do. I want blood. Tell me about the crash here.
Yeah, I pretty much just I flew off of a jump that I didn't know was a jump. I don't know how to jump my bike. I just dropped my bike. I landed face first, put my tooth through my lip, broke my nose, 2 black eyes, nice concussion, and a lot of people pay good money for lip injections though, and my lips were looking pretty plump for a few weeks. So plus side.
It seems like every sport you do, it's just like before you even start, it's like, I'm going pro.
Oh yeah,
I'm going pro. I ain't going at the little mountain at the bottom. I'm going up to the top there.
I have one speed and it's 110%. And this is what I'm learning about myself is like time after time again, like I'm sure we will talk about this pattern a little bit later on, but I think I'm like really trying to learn that I don't need to do that. Like I don't need to walk into every situation and be the pro, like be the best in the room, best at everything. Like ego checking myself a little bit, bringing myself back down to earth. We're working on it.
I like that. You've got to work on it. It's a learning curve, but you've obviously had good experiences in sports too, right?
Yes,
all of the friends that you've made along the way, and I know you talked about it about skiing, all the friends that you still are friends with, and then soccer too.
Yeah.
Again, you have moved into another sport, I believe.
Yes.
I think people have probably seen it on your social media and stuff. Talk to me about the next sport you got into.
Yeah. So after I messed my face up real good, then I got into running. And that was kind of a funny time too. I was like going through a breakup at that point. So I think running was kind of therapy for me as well.
I've kind of noticed every time a breakup happens, something crazy happens.
I know.
So the pattern now is you either get drowned, you either have to fly out of a country. Like
Leave a country. It's very dramatic. It's always dramatic with me for sure. Yeah, but for me, that was the point also in my career where I was making very little money and had no money for therapy. So running was cheaper than therapy. And then, yeah, I was mountain biking, really, really great sport for endurance. Like I had never felt so fit in my life, even after like playing university soccer level, which was a pretty intense level of sport. I remember running a 10K kind of at the end of mountain biking season and just feeling like it was the easiest thing I'd ever done in the world. And I kind of made that decision, well, maybe I should run a marathon because I've always wanted to do that. So yeah, then
because you've done 2 full marathons and a half, is that right? Or?
Yeah, I've raced 2 fulls and then I've raced 2 halves. But like in the training for my full, it's like a stupid amount of running. A lot of half marathons were ran.
But you clearly enjoy it to run. I mean, when I'm like, I don't really want to run a marathon. Maybe I will, but I think you've got to be passionate about it to do it. Or is it your personality again trying to get to an achievement? Was that the feeling of it?
A little bit of both. I definitely I've always liked running, and like with soccer, I feel like that just kind of like came with that. And I was good at it, so that's probably why I liked it too.
Okay, I've got a question for you then. If you're bad at something, do you ditch it? Are you bored?
Can't think of anything that I've been bad at lately.
That's another problem we've just addressed. This is another series of I'm pulling out every red flag of everyone that comes on the episode.
Yes, seriously. No, I mean, I think even like with running, that too, like every single coach that I've ever had in any sport told me that my body was built for speed, not for endurance or long distance. So that I feel like was always kind of in the back of my head I was like, I could run a marathon, no problem. And then I did. And then I ran a second one. And then, I was getting pretty quick. So, yeah.
So there was a motivator behind it, really.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Okay. But, I don't know. There were other motivators too. Like it just felt good. I think I know it's like so cliche, but that runner's high, like once I tapped into that runner's high, that was such a thing for me and it's funny how, it's such a mental sport. Like once you wrap your head around it, for some reason, like when I was training and if I was running like 50 kilometers a week, that was not a big deal for me. Whereas now, like I'm like, I want to go on a 5K tomorrow. Like, you know what I mean? But when you're in it, it's weird how you kind of adapt to your
What do you do in winter for running?
I just ran in the winter. You got to dress for it. We're Canadian.
Like you still,
Dan.
I know. I'm learning. But you'd still run outside. Like you didn't switch to indoor kind of training and stuff like that.
No, I never really did indoor training. If there was like a big cold snap, then I would and I had to do a big run, then I would maybe go like do 2 spin classes back to back or something like that. Just make sure that I'm hitting my like time rather than distance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
For sure. You also mentioned actually therapy. You said you couldn't afford therapy. You weren't earning enough money at that time. You've told me before that you can't be sad if you're too tired to feel anything. Now, I thought this was really interesting and you probably knew I was going to bring it up, but that's a really interesting line or comment or quote from yourself. But tell me, what do you mean by that? Because I think people will hear that and go, what the hell is this girl on?
You're like, by interesting, I mean extremely unhealthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an avoidant. I have a really hard time talking about my feelings. And so I just felt like if I was absolutely exhausted, I wouldn't think about it as much. And I think going through that breakup, I don't know, it was just like I would get into this kind of meditative state when I was running, and then I'd get the endorphins after, and it was like all good for me.
I'm definitely going to unpack your feelings a little bit later, which I know you're avoiding, but we'll talk about business now. Obviously, this is going to be a large topic. I think for everyone listening, or some people won't have, but a lot of have seen you through your TikToks or your YouTube channel and the work that you're doing. But before we go into, I guess, the business that you're running right now, talk to me about your first job. So I know you were working at a social media agency, and you got paid pretty poorly, and then you got motivated to start what you're doing now. But talk to me about your first big girl job and how you started this journey.
Yeah, so that was like right when I moved back from New Zealand. And obviously COVID, so many people were losing their job. Therefore, so many people were looking for jobs. So it was super competitive. I think the agency that I applied for and I ended up getting, there was over 250 applicants for the job that they ended up hiring me for. I was like, joke's on you. I'm crazy, but okay. Yeah, it was great. I learned so much. Like I wouldn't change that experience for anything, but there was also, it was a pretty small company, a pretty small agency. And so everything was pretty hands-on. Every kind of aspect of the business was hands-on. So I got to learn a lot about how I did want to run a business and also how I didn't want to run a business, if that makes sense. But yeah, it was a grind. It was a grind. And I was literally like, yeah, I was not really being compensated to what I felt was fair at all. So that was what eventually kind of, while I was doing that, that's why I started painting on the side, because I wasn't making any money and I was like, I need some sort of compensation here. So yeah, I started painting, and then I was able to apply everything that I was learning from the social media agency to my art social media, if that makes sense. So it was kind of like, yeah, it was like it was a really, really good transition, and obviously paid off quite well. But eventually I got to the point where art was going quite well, and I had an external social media client on the side. And so that was kind of when I took that leap of faith to leave the agency and start my own company and focus on my art and CASSBRATT Social as well.
For sure. Well, let's talk about them. Obviously, the two businesses, CASSBRATT Art and CASSBRATT Social. I always try and say them slowly because it can be difficult. We already talked about that before this, but I guess tell me a little bit about those, kind of in your own words. What are those companies and why did you start them?
Good question. Okay, so CASSBRATT Social is an agency, a social media agency that is pretty much all things. I wear a lot of different hats. I do everything from social media strategy, paid advertising, user-generated content, so a lot of like video content and stuff like that. And then CASSBRATT Art is really just me as an artist. What really took off on TikTok was the nudes. So, hi, I'm Cassie and I paint nudes. But yeah, I do like to paint all things. I mean, I was always quite creative growing up, so it just started honestly as like a creative outlet for me, and then I got tossed into the world of nudes, and it kind of like steamrolled from there.
How did nudes, we'll kind of roll into that now. How did nudes and send nudes come up? I know that, when I first saw it, it went crazy. Like people were like, especially on, I think it was TikTok that really lifted it up.
Yes.
But talk to me about that for people, especially if they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
What made you come up with that idea and follow kind of that path in your painting career?
Yeah. So I do not know how to explain this, but like even from the beginning, like I guess my kind of like art journey started when I was in university, and I would just like sketch before nighttime just because it was like, again, cheaper than therapy.
Free therapy for you.
Free
I know.
We're all about that. I will pay for therapy one day. Yeah, I don't know why. I just like always painted naked women. I know that's like, it's just a weird thing. It is what it is. But
is it a weird thing though? Is it weird for you, or is it weird for the person?
I guess that's
is it
a
weird
good
for the
point.
person that, because I think people listening to this maybe think, okay, so you paint nudes, you're painting women. What does that feel like for is it awkward to get people on? Does it feel weird for you? Like, I'm trying to understand, how did you generate that this was a thing that took off? And obviously people were down to do it. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I genuinely believe that the female body is beautiful. And that is why I painted my first nude, like the acrylic canvas nude, like that. I don't know. that's what I just thought it was pretty. I wanted to paint it, whatever. And then people really liked it. People responded really well. And so that kind of triggered something in me to like paint more of them. And I painted a few more, and then I was getting some commissions. And so I was getting into that figure art. And then actually I took a lot of influence from an artist, Sophie T. She's actually from the UK, like you.
Lovely.
And she was doing this like, she was doing a lot of like body positive figure art and painting people to like show them as a masterpiece and how powerful that was. And that really spoke to me. So I really took that and that was kind of like the idea that really blew up on TikTok. And that was like, you know, people wanted paintings that were for their partners. Like it was also like, oh, it's a wedding gift, like for my hubby, our wedding day, whatever. Here's my gorgeous naked body on a canvas. But then it also stemmed into like self-love. And it was like, I want this painting done for myself so I can like look at myself as a masterpiece. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So obviously it picked up pretty quick, and again, I think TikTok elevated that for when it. Did you do a show?
Yeah.
Did you do a show for it? I know you did paint shows. Was that for the Nudes brand specifically, or was that just in general?
Yeah, I did an art show that was like, I think I had like 2 mountain like landscape pieces in it, and then the rest were nudes. So that's something that it was kind of difficult, and something that I'm like revisiting now is I do feel like because the nudes took off so well on social media, I almost feel like that put me in a bit of a box. Like I love painting, but I love painting for myself. And if I want to paint nudes, then I want to paint nudes. But also if I want to paint a mountain, or if I want to paint a dog or an abstract, whatever, I want to position myself as an artist, not like a nude artist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how do you balance that, especially if people are coming to you for the art and it's their decision what they want painting? How have you balanced that? I did check out your website, and there was like, I wouldn't say there was instructions, but there was, you did put a bit about what what your brand or niche is.
Yes.
How do you juggle that then if you're wanting to paint for your own passion, but you're obviously having customers that are the paying people, I guess? How did you balance that?
Well, that was like one of the hardest transitions. So after I left the agency and I was focusing more on art, I think for me, and it's been a journey like over this year, and I feel like I'm only now coming to this conclusion of like, if I want to paint for myself, like what does that look like, and how am I going to be able to balance that, and how does that look financially also? Because I think that was a really big obstacle that I ran into. Was I was like, once those commissions took off, I was like, amazing, now I'm filled with commissions, and business was booming, and I was like booked out for 6 months. But by the end of it, I was like, okay, I love like what I'm giving to people, and this is like awesome. This experience has been awesome, but is it really filling my cup? Like, is this really what I want to be doing? And I've kind of come to the conclusion like, yes and no. I think it's been really awesome. I have met a lot of other artists in the Calgary community that I've been able to have this conversation with, which has been so powerful for me because, you know, as a TikTok artist, I didn't really have any artsy friends. Like all of my friends in Calgary are like oil and gas or like tech, you know? So I was the only one who was like at whatever, hanging out with my friends being like, I'm having this issue. Does anyone know how to help me? And no one is like, I have nothing like to add. I don't know what to tell you. So that's been really nice to be able to like connect with other artists who've been able to offer some guidance on that. I just got a new residency at this studio space called Neverland in Calgary. It is so freaking cool, and there are so many amazing people in there. So that's been one of my really big goals this year, is to like tap into actual community, like meeting other people and having these conversations and being able to hear like how other people have navigated these situations, so that I'm not going in blindly and trying to come out with like solutions on that. But yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, the hardest thing for me to balance, especially because I'm financially motivated, are the finances. Like at the end of the day, I could call myself an artist and I could paint mountains and dogs if I wanted to, but like maybe no one's going to buy them. Right. Like, I don't know. And so that's a hard thing to balance.
I think, I mean, obviously as a business owner, a lot of people will relate that you've got to make a decision, right? Some people we know are in business for money. It doesn't matter what they do. And some people are in it because of what they're doing. And some people have to find that balance where it's all about how it makes them feel, but also they're paying the bills, right? And that's probably a challenge you're going through.
Yeah.
Obviously, being an artist in general, it's a bit of a grind. It's not an easy business to grow. But I guess for you, how do you make that sustainable? Thinking about the position you're in right now, thinking about the long-term growth that you would have in a position like that.
Yeah.
That's you're looking at me right now like I've been thinking about this for a long time.
We're working on it.
But what does that look like? How have you thought about that?
So for me, I've actually kind of tried to take it back a notch with everything art focused and really focus on my social media business. And
is that because of profit? You said you're money motivated, and I'm asking you that because of what you've said, and don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer.
No. Yes and no. It is kind of because of profit, but it's also for me needing to find something that feels sustainable for me with my mental health, with my capacity. And that was the issue, was like painting commissions and painting 20 commissions in a month. That was absolutely not sustainable. I got burnt out. It was like back to that, whatever, that sport kind of like horrible pattern that I got into, where it was just like I would push myself so hard, and then I would completely burn out, and I would go into these insane like stages of pretty debilitating burnout. And I'd have to take like a significant amount of time off, and then I would go right back in. So for me, trying to focus on my social media business, and in my head, I've just like made it that art is just a side gig for me again. It's just a hobby. It's just something that I do for fun because I enjoy it. That's why I started doing art, and that's the mentality that I want to have with art forever. And I think that's such a hard balance when you're turning your passion into a paycheck. Like trying to navigate that, it can be horrible. Like it can end really badly. And then, I never want to be in a position where I feel like I don't want to pick up a paintbrush, which I have gotten myself into that situation because of that burnout. And I think that's kind of the overall lesson that I learned through all those sports that I would pick up and quit and pick up and quit, was like starting my own business. I was like, I can't quit. Like I can't pick up and quit. And especially because you're doing it on a stage, you're doing it on social media. I'm telling all my friends, this is what I'm doing. Like, how embarrassing is that going to be in a year if I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Like,
it's funny though. I feel like a lot of businesses actually fail because of the pressure that people put on themselves, right? Just like you can grow so quickly, whether it's on TikTok and the business, and you're a brand right now. And that's a lot of pressure. They see you as CASSBRATT art, and as soon as you realign or take that away, it's hard to make a decision that you have to, but you have to do it for yourself, right? And sometimes it's difficult thinking, what do people think? I know we're going to go into what people have thought on comments that you've seen as well, but let's talk about the positive.
Sure.
Obviously, you experienced quite a lot of growth last year. So tell me about that experience. Can you share with us kind of what that growth looked like? I know your face is telling me it was overwhelming, but obviously super positive with regards to your business.
Yeah, it was insane. So at the time that I left the agency was also the time where I decided I was going to take a really aggressive TikTok strategy. So I was posting like 6 to 8 times a day, which was crazy. Like I was just pumping out so much content, and probably like 6 weeks in, I posted this TikTok. It was a voiceover. Schitt's Creek. Do you watch Schitt's Creek? Perfect. It was like a voiceover of Moira Rose talking about her body and how she wants to basically like look at herself as a young, or how people should take nudes when they're young because they'll appreciate them so much more when they're older. Anyways, I did this voiceover. It got over like 1 million views, and it absolutely took off. And from there, everything just kind of steamrolled. It was crazy. Commissions were filled for 6 months. I ended up just having to close them because I pretty much like had no processes in place to handle that kind of volume. Like before that, I was lucky if I had 5 commissions on my list. By the time I closed my commissions, I had over 200 commissions on my list that I had to do.
Wow. obviously that's a stressful environment to be in. You're a one-man band.
Yeah.
And
One
that's,
woman show.
there you
Thank
go.
you.
Sorry, my apologies. There you go. But you hired someone, I believe.
Yes.
Because obviously you got to a point where that it's not sustainable on your own. Talk to me about that. Obviously, it's difficult, hiring someone, and again, that's the pressure. Are they a full-time person? What did this look like, and what determined that decision?
Yeah, so I have a new person working for me now, but it was at that point where this is the issue about social media and being an artist is like your product is yourself. I would always make the joke to people like I need to grow more sets of arms so that I can produce product faster. And really the only way to adapt was like to raise prices. And I was raising my prices and I was still getting these commissions. So yeah, it was at that point that I hired someone to assist me mostly with like admin stuff and background stuff that wasn't really client facing on my social media side, because I was like, I can't drop the ball on all of these things that I've promised to other clients as well.
Have you ever dropped the ball?
No, never dropped the ball. Yeah, no.
I was going to actually tell me what it is, but it's probably safe to say we'll keep
I've
that
never
one.
dropped the ball. Sometimes I show up late. I'm usually late, but the ball is always not dropped.
I like that. I guess kind of moving forward, talking about plateau. I know you talked about kind of a burnout, and you've obviously experienced this, a bit of a roller coaster, it seems.
Yeah.
But have you experienced kind of plateau in business, whether that was earning money or obviously just burning out? What did that look like?
Yeah. And that was hard too. I think that's kind of the weird thing about like the viralness of social media and how business can be absolutely insanely booming for a few months. And then maybe the next month you make like 1% of what you made last month. And so that was a weird adjustment for me because all of a sudden I was like, I've made it. Like I've done it. I've done the thing and we're here. Like, when business is really good and you're riding that high and you just think month over month, I'm going to be making this much and I'm such a star and I've done it. Like the box is checked. And I think I kind of let that go to my head a little bit. Like I got comfortable and I stopped pumping out as much like marketing content as I was. And then I closed my commissions and, then everything kind of came crashing down. I got everything out and then I reopened my commissions. And on the day I reopened my commissions, I was like, I'm going to have, it's all going to come flooding in again. And I think I got like one. And I was like, oh my God, what are we doing now? Like, so I was thankful that I have my social media business on the side. So like at the end of the day, rent is paid, food's on the table, like investments are in the bank. We're good. Like things are stable. But obviously I wasn't making that like excess thing. So yeah.
Sure. And have you come to like a conclusion that you had to realign and you had to make this more sustainable? You've obviously come to that stage now where whether you hired someone or you chose that something had to give, that it's not going to be a roller coaster all the time. There's got to be a sustainable part to it. And you came to that conclusion. Yeah,
I think hiring someone was a really good solution for me, like being able to delegate tasks and having like trust in someone to be able to delegate that. I think that's hard when you have your own business and it's like your child.
Yeah.
And you're
is it a full-time employee or is it?
No,
like
it's part-time.
Okay.
It's part-time, yeah.
Okay. Right.
Which will hopefully
evolve.
Change. Yeah,
Sure.
things are really looking up. It's weird how like I feel like you can speak to the universe and the universe speaks back. So things are going good now, but I definitely was in a bit of like a plateau. But it was good for me. I think I needed that.
Yeah, I think every business goes through it, and typically it's failure that moved you forward.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually focus on. You're only 26. You're running your own business, and then there's other things you've got to think about long term. For example, retirement and plans and what that looks like. What does that look like for you when you're this young? You're running these business. You're on a high of running the business, but you've got to at some point plan for your future. What has that process been like for you?
Stressful. Thank you for asking. I think it's weird. Like I always like talking to my friends, and they're working these big, awesome jobs who their employees are matching their retirement savings. And and you know, they have like fancy plans and packages to look forward to. And so I think that was just something that I always planned for, and I would encourage anyone who's looking to start their own business to plan for that as young as you can. But it is weird, like being 26 and being like, I need to plan for my retirement, which is hopefully when I'm 30. But,
Yeah, exactly.
but you know, might be when I'm 60. And so yeah, it is like a weird thing to think about. And then the other thing is like family planning and stuff like that too. Like looking at my friends who have maternity leave options and thinking about that. Like, you know, me in the next 10 years, I'm like, what is that going to look like for me? Like I am my business. And I think that's what I'm kind of like trying to work around, is like, how can I create a business that is sustainable on its own and without me? And if I do need to detach or whatever, and even like vacation, like I don't take vacation. I'm always on my phone. Like I have to be on my email every day. If I am away, I don't even tell my clients. Like I still tell them I'm working 9 to 5 and I'm available during those hours, just because maybe that's just like me trying to save face.
It's probably
and
what they
be
require.
Professional, but
Yeah, for sure. They probably require that too. You know, I
Right.
think social it's a very demanding job, right? And
It is.
clients expect results, and it's pretty much performance based in some aspect. So I understand that. I understand that it's a difficulty when you are that brand and that's your face. You know, you've created that, but planning and moving forward, hopefully you'll be able to kind of build the foundations, build it, you know, a part-time person. That's a great step. You're at the early stages of what that looks like. At least you're thinking about it now. You'd be surprised how many people start business. It gets to 30 or 40, you then, you know, you've got a kid on the way and you've not even thought about it. So, I mean, I think that's good that you're thinking about it, but it's not an easy challenge, and it's probably been pretty stressful to think about that already.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, like even content wise, I've kind of made a bit of a switch where I started posting to like my personal TikTok and stuff too, which in that way like feels more sustainable. Like my art TikTok was amazing, but I was putting myself in that niche. Like it was like, how much content can I push out if I'm in that niche? And now that I'm posting to my own personal content, it's literally just like me living my life online and like giving people my random boring shower thoughts, but people sometimes like to listen to them.
You'd be surprised how many people do listen to your TikToks.
It is wild. But yeah, I think that balance as well. And I would encourage people, like before you get into any sort of job in this industry, is like, does that feel natural to you? Because if it doesn't feel natural, it's not going to be sustainable. And how can you like craft your processes to make it the most sustainable? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I think the other thing for this is well, it's not necessarily something you plan for, but relationships. Obviously, they can be hard when you're in your own business, and you know the shift in society. Talking about kind of less time for dating, later marriages, later pregnancies as well. Talk to me a little bit about that, and why do you think that is a thing now?
Yeah. It's so weird. I remember when I was in Australia, I met these two gals who were also in business programs, and they were like 3 years younger than me. And they were in business programs, but their recruiting is a bit different in the States. Like the companies will come in and interview you when you're in like your second year or whatever, and they try and scoop you up so that by the time you graduate, they're taking you with them. And I remember having a conversation with them, and they were like, oh yeah, we, you know, had an interview with Deloitte or whatever, these big 4 companies. And one of the incentives that they were offering was that they were going to freeze our eggs for us. And I was like, we are 22 years old. Like, what are you talking about? But you know, now being a little bit older and like looking, not that if my boyfriend listens to this, not that I want a baby right now, but
yeah, he's going to get the wrong impression from this
like,
podcast for sure. She's like, who is she? Maybe he's going to learn a little bit more about you, but hopefully it's on, and I'm sure it is on the positive side.
No, it's okay. I have puppy fever, not baby fever, but it is like something that you think about. Unfortunately, like women have this biological clock, which is kind of crazy, and trying to balance that, and to each their own. I think that's like the number one thing to walk away with, is like, if you want to be a powerhouse, climbing the corporate ladder work girl, and you want to freeze your eggs and not have babies till you're 40, like power to you, go do it. I think for me, on the other hand, I really, really grinded the past year, and I've kind of feel like I'm coming out of this and I have a weight lifted off my shoulder, and I'm just trying, like, for me, life is more than work, and the grind is overrated. I think in Calgary, I'm probably every big city that the grind is like put on this pedestal. It's like, that's what you should be doing, and no sleep and whatever. You can sleep when you're dead, and like work now. And I don't know. I'm just kind of over that. Like, I'm like, I want to do what feels good. And if that's pushing myself once in a while, then that's great. And if it's also like listening to my body and slowing down, then that's cool too. Yeah, we got off topic there because we were talking about women in the workplace. But,
I was just letting you go. I kind of just enjoy letting you go. She
told me not to let me do that.
I know. I'm actually gonna disclose this now, because before this she said don't let me go on a tangent, and I've actually been enjoying listening to it and letting it go, because I just never know where it's gonna go. But I'm gonna pull you back in.
My hands are sweaty again. I'm nervous.
I guess on the topic of work, as we're still on that. I do want to talk about hate comments that you've received.
Yes.
I think it's important to talk about. Obviously, prior to this recording, we looked into your comments. I looked pretty deep, honestly, not only the ones that you've shared. I'm going to share some of them. Some said,
hit me.
Did this girl grow up with a dad in the home? So you've never been told to get a real job. Don't recommend this channel. Anyone tell you to shut up and put your phone down? So clearly, I know, listening to that back, there's horrible people. People are mean.
Yeah.
There are people like that. I think it's becoming more evident. Trolls are becoming a big topic that's being discussed. And I know tech companies are thinking, how do we clamp down on people like this? But I want to know, how has this made you feel? I don't know if you like talking about your feelings, which you said before, but tell me how it's made you feel, because clearly, like you've said, these businesses are your baby.
Yes.
How has this made you feel when you're receiving quite a large volume, when I've looked deep enough, from people about these, your businesses or yourself as well?
Yeah, not good. Thanks for asking. It's been an interesting balance, especially because it's funny, like when I tell people this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what someone commented, and someone's like, well, you got to know that you made it. Like if you have haters, like you've made it in life. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but it still sucks. I don't know. I think I don't even like to give energy of any sort to those people. Like, even hearing you read those comments, I'm like literally sweating. Like, I hate that. And but I think the number one thing, and this sounds so cheesy and cliche, is like, stay true to yourself and just be confident in who you are and what you're doing, and always remember why you started doing that. And if it feels good to you, and if it's like true to yourself, then that is literally the only thing that matters. People are going to hate no matter what. People are always going to have something to say. And yeah, I think it's that confidence piece. And I think that confidence piece plays a really big part in my career, and being able to just kind of step over those hate comments, because, I mean, if you give any energy to anything like that, it's just never going to end well.
I'm going to guess, though, that you have. Yeah. And I want to know about a time that it has affected you, and what did that genuinely make you feel? Because I think there's probably been times you're upset. Again, I don't know if you want to be sharing this information, but I'm trying to pull it out a little bit, because I almost want people to be aware that hate comments are pretty regular. They're becoming more regular, honestly, which is not a good thing. But there was obviously a time where you spent a lot of time self-care and managing those hate comments, but that wasn't always the case, was it?
No, I mean, some hate comments for me in my head are like easier to handle than others. I find if people like talk shit about my business, or if they're talking crap about my job or that kind of thing, it's easier for me to brush that off, because I'm like, dude, like, I'm doing good. I've got the numbers behind me to back it. Like, I'm not worried about you or what you have to say, because I'm on my way. I think the more difficult ones for me to handle are like personal appearance, like if anyone's, or like, if someone, like, even like about my family, like stuff like that, where it just kind of like strikes a chord. Recently, I was like really trying this laminated brow thing, and I don't think it was like really my style, but I posted this video and it got
saw
like,
this.
did you? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Did you notice that my eyebrows were kind of crazy?
No comment.
Oh my God. So I posted this stupid video that got like 2 million views. And I swear to God, it was like it was about skiing. Like it was about ski outfits.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, every third comment that came in was like, what is happening with her eyebrows? And I was like, I am gonna shave them off. Like, what? And so that was kind of the first time where I was dealing with hate comments on my personal stuff, because everything before was like my art and social media, art, like the nudes and stuff like that. And like that, it kind of bugged me, but it was honestly just like, I remember there was one day that I gave energy to it, and I was scrolling through and I was reading them, and I was like, I had a horrible day, like major espresso day. And yeah, had a good cry about it. And the next day was a new day, so that was fine. But honestly, the eyebrows thing, I literally went and got them done. Like I was like searching up what is the best brow place. Laura Brows, by the way. Thank you so much for hooking me up.
Oh dear.
They did me good. Like they were, I was like, I'm having a brow crisis. People on the internet are saying I have bad brows. I feel like I've always had good brows my whole life, and now I don't know who I am anymore. And they were like, okay, please calm down. We'll give you a
I
whack.
can't stop staring at them. No, I'm joking.
Now you're looking at my eyebrows.
I'm joking. I guess kind of closing up business to a certain extent here. What's the future looking like for you? You know, you've obviously had to realign in some aspect, whether it's a product-based business or the service-based side. So what's kind of next for you? What's the next steps, and what can people look forward to looking towards for your business?
I would love to start another business, which I feel like I know
it's like another sport all over again.
I know it's so bad, but I it's funny. Like this was literally like a month ago, and I was like, I'm going to start a bikini company. It's done. I've decided it. I was like looking into manufacturers, and I was like, this is a go. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, maybe I should make sure that everything else is set in place before I kind of jump into anything else. But I do really, really like the idea of a product-based company. I think it like something that, you know, would be somewhat sustainable on its own, that I could step away from, and it would be able to still.
Is this the thoughts of kind of retirement as well, and vacations, and being able to come up with a product that's not going to take the work or hours it does for the art and things, right?
Like the entrepreneur lifestyle is really just throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks, and learning from your experiences. And in my two businesses that I have, number one, like they both require a stupid amount of my time, which is, I think, the thing that pisses me off the most. And that's what I want to kind of get away from, is like, I want to build a business that's not around myself. Like right now I am the center of both of my businesses, which is a lot to maintain, and doesn't give me really a ton of freedom. It gives me way more freedom than anyone who's working a corporate job. But I think, the idea of like a product based or like a service where it's something that like you create once and you send it out there and it's done with. You don't have to touch it. You make money overnight. That's what I'm trying to do. Money while I sleep.
Aren't we all? Would you ever consider being, I don't know if influencer is the word, or digital creator? Is that something that you would consider that may be able to give you a little bit more freedom?
Yeah, I love the idea of being an influencer. I think though my definition of an influencer would just look a little bit different to like the typical definition of an influencer. I think I really like video content and stuff. I'm not really big on the Instagram kind of curated content, aesthetic stuff. Like I'm more interested in being an influencer if I can literally just live my life and be me and put that online and people like it.
Yeah, I think you've already found that value though. I mean, if you look at who's subscribing or your TikTok views, they're not looking because you've curated the content. Like you mentioned, you browse. You're going on there because your brows have gone weird.
Totally.
No, I was just curious if that would be a route that you go down.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of it, and I would entertain the idea of that. But I like I like what I'm doing right now. And if posting on the side of like my personal TikTok, you know, and growing that organically while I can, while I'm doing all of this. And if that feels natural and like it's in balance for me, then I'm just going to keep doing that. And then, let's just say I don't want to close that door. I'd like to keep it open. I like to keep that open for sure.
Sure. I think on that, I want to talk about a TikTok I saw actually. And the power of TikTok. You actually made a TikTok for Swish Dental Care, I believe it was.
Yes.
I feel like everyone probably here in Calgary or in Canada in general probably saw this. And I know it got nearly 300,000 views. But maybe from your perspective, tell me about kind of how this came about. I also want to know who Swish is, and kind of the story behind that and how it got so much traction.
For sure. So Swish Dental Care is literally the best dentist in Calgary. If you're looking for a dentist, please go see them. They're so cool. Their concept is more of an approach of like wellness and, I feel like when you think of the dentist, everyone hates the dentist. It's like stuffy and white and gross and, uncomfortable. Here they had aromatherapy, they had weighted blankets, they had slippers. There was like a drink bar when I got in there. They had Netflix on the ceiling. Like literally everything was so well thought out. Just such a marketable company. Anyways, I went to the dentist and that was like the first time in a few years. And I left and I made a TikTok about it in my car. Yeah, it absolutely blew up. By the time, so I made my appointment and they were booking like a week out. Like I booked a week in advance, which I feel like is somewhat typical for a dentist office. You cannot get an appointment there until September 1st. Now I think someone commented on my video today saying I just booked their most like next available appointment is in September. So like to think about the power of TikTok and one video that some girl made in her car, like literally has booked this company out for the next 2 quarters is freaking insane. Like the power, and they ended up contracting me out for some video content as well, which is awesome. Cause like that was literally the best resume that I could have applied for. Was like, hey, I literally just got you business for the next 6 months. Can you please hire me now? I will do. Like imagine.
Did they actually, obviously they've seen somehow there's been an influx and they probably went, what the hell's happened here? But did they figure it out or did someone go to them? How did this kind of come to an understanding that it actually was you and the power of this TikTok video that you put out had helped this business so much? So
funny. So I actually went back for a second appointment because I had to get some fillings. So I was there like earlier this week, and the dentist there, he's a part owner, and he said to me, he's like, I thought my system was being hacked. He's like, I literally called. He's like, it was insane. It was just like booking. He's like, I actually called like 4 of the people who booked just to make sure they were real humans and not robots, like crashing my system. And he's like, they were real and I didn't know what was happening. And then it came to like that, your TikTok video, whatever. And anyways, they were so cute. They like bought me flowers and gave me a new toothbrush. And like, yeah, they're super awesome. Just like really, really good people. And that's what I like too about kind of exploring this personal brand that I've gotten into is like your network is your net worth, and like being able to put stuff out there and meet other people in this community that are like potential clients in the future or like potential, that kind of thing. Just making those connections is so valuable. So that's been really cool as well.
Amazing. I'd tell everyone to check out Swish, but they're probably not going to get an appointment till Christmas. But you can check. You might get it in a cancellation. But I think that's an amazing story, right? And I also saw after that you posted another TikTok, which was basically saying this had happened. If there's any local brands, which I thought was amazing. And, I was kind of thinking in my head, who can you help out in just one video? And for you, it took what? 2 minutes, maybe less, to do something like that. But the power of that network is pushing eyes and ears towards kind of a brand locally and can change your life. And that's probably super rewarding for you to obviously realize that the long-term thing that's done for that business is obviously, there's a lot of eyes on it right now. And I'll tell you right now, I emailed them when I saw the video. No, seriously, I emailed them. I didn't follow up with them, so I probably missed my appointment now. But no, I emailed them from your video. And I was looking for it, and it happened. I was actually just generally looking for a dentist. I'd already emailed 3 places, and I was like, I don't know where to go. And I saw your video, and I sent them an email. I was just kind of curious about it. So that's just a proven part of social media that as simple as that video was, you just almost gave a referral. People trusted that you'd had a great experience, and it put people's eyes on that business. So I really love that you were able to do that. And obviously they've, rewarded you and got you on some form of contract to continue a couple of videos. So that's awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about kind of mental health just to finalize. I know throughout this, we've talked a little bit about, espresso depresso, did you call it?
Yes.
There you go. So that's her way of talking about her feelings. But I wanted to talk about the pattern that I've noticed throughout this, which I'm sure you've noticed as well. Obviously, extreme sports or tasks and burning out and quitting. And there's obviously a pattern that had developed there. I don't know what you would call this. I don't know what it's classed as. We've not diagnosed you yet. I will do after this. But have you kind of noticed that yourself, and why do you think that is?
Hyperfixation is what we were going to call it.
There you go.
Yes, I have noticed this pattern. I think I really noticed this pattern like throughout my entire life. And that was part of my fear, was like in starting this business, was to create something that I wasn't just going to quit and drop. And because even after my like work at the agency, I only worked there a year and then I quit. And I just feel like in the back of my head, I'm like, am I a quitter? Like, am I just a quitter? And so that was kind of an insecurity of mine starting my own business. But I think what's been so nice about my own business is I have found ways to make something positive out of that hyperfixation. And I think now I'm just really trying to learn how to manage that for myself. Like, I think I just am that way. I have this like weird addictive personality. And so being able to have my own business and to have different branches that I can explore that with has been a good way to kind of like take something that's maybe not super positive and use it in a positive way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you talk about kind of being addictive personality. Have you had, would you say, in your own personal experience, had mental health challenges? And if you have, what have those been? If you can share a bit of information there.
Yeah, I would say like burnout is the biggest one. And that is something that I am still trying to nail down and still trying to manage. And I think that just goes back to like finding some sort of formula that is sustainable for me over the long term, and learning from my lessons as well. I think I have had well enough face plants to be like, okay, Cassie, take a good hard look at what we're doing here. And like, how can we create something that's sustainable that you're not going to face plant and die and want to quit and drop everything. Yeah.
I mean, burnout is a big mental challenge, and I don't think people see it. I think people see it as physical, right? Because obviously it is, right. You're exhausted, but you're mentally exhausted, right? And typically, and I'm seeing it from your pattern, it's that roller coaster. You're giving everything your all. And a lot of people do this, and then they burn out. They need a long time to rest, and then they'll go straight back into that. And it's really is a roller coaster of life, and finding that balance is hard, especially in the world we live in. There's a lot of go. What's the next big thing? You just said, maybe I'll start a bikini company. And that's about finding that balance, right? To ultimately look after your mental health as well.
And I think also, like, it sounds like alcoholics awareness, but like knowing that you have that problem, like, I think that's really honestly the first step of like just being aware of that, and then trying to like be mindful of that as you're navigating moving forward. Yeah,
that's the biggest challenge, right? A lot of people don't know what it is. They're kind of like, why am I burnt out all the time? And again, I've noticed it through this story, which is it's not a bad thing. It's just about understanding that balance. What are you, I guess my question would be, what are you doing this year to be able to combat that? You've addressed it a little bit. You understand that it's happening. You're looking at me like, shit.
I'm like, I don't have an answer because it's currently happening.
Well, but that's okay. Obviously you're thinking about it. So what are you thinking that you could potentially do to combat that? It's a difficult thing to combat because clearly that is your personality. You're being yourself.
Yes. Well, I think hiring more people and delegating more work would be an awesome solution for me. And then also taking the approach that like life is more than, you know, the amount of money you make or your accomplishments in life. Like it's about connections with people, and that is so valuable. And so kind of trying to make that like mind shift of like, it's not all about money and shiny things. Like it's about connecting with people and friendship and family, you know, like creating a life that you're like truly happy with and like doing things that truly serve you as a person. I just think there's so much power in that. And so that's really, really what I'm trying to focus on.
Well, I'm sure we're all excited to follow that journey. For kind of the final questions, I ask a lot of my guests this, and you look terrified, but if your life was a book and you could name this particular part of your life a title of a chapter, what would you name it and why?
Right now I would call it, I don't want to say like slowing down, but something like that. I don't know. I'm going to ask you.
That's okay.
The plateau. The plateau. It's like something boring. Yeah.
Just call it burnout.
Burnout. Yeah. Let's just call it burnout for sure.
And then finally, is there anyone that you can think of that you think would be a valued guest on a platform like this?
Yes. Unfortunately, they're not in Calgary, but maybe if you could set up something virtually. My two friends, Malin and Austin, who I went to university with, they started this really awesome company called Friends of Felix. So it's really about like men's mental health. That's like their big thing, and promoting that. I think they would be like so cool for you to talk to. And they've started this kind of a clothing company, and they've experienced some ups and downs as well. And two super awesome guys.
For sure. Awesome. Love that. Well, thanks so much for obviously being vulnerable, sharing a bit about your business and your life as well. I'm sure all the listeners that have listened have had a good laugh as I have along the way. Obviously, check you out on TikTok and the funny videos, including how our eyebrows don't always go to plan. But thanks so much for joining me, Cass.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.